The 9 best Chicago suburbs, many of them are ranked by niche.com as 9 of the best suburbs in the Chicago area. Looking at them, you really have to understand the layout of Chicago. So you have the lake on one side, and then you have the northern suburbs, and the western suburbs are the ones that I'm going to focus on here today. So the northern suburbs are predominantly the north shore of Chicago that are right on the lakefront. You have Evanston, Wilmette, Winnetka, Kenilworth, Glencoe, Lake Forest, Highland Park, Lake Bluff. These are predominantly the north shore suburbs, and they all are very good. And then you have the western suburbs, many of which are Hinsdale, Glen Ellen, you have Glenview, you have Northfield, varying degrees of closeness to the lakefront. So this is a big factor in evaluating the best suburbs in Chicago. It obviously is a personal choice. Some people do not really care. I've just had a client, they don't care about living close to the lake. If you don't care about living close to the lake, there are some really beautiful, lots of resources, great transportation, restaurant, shopping, all of that far away from the lake, anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour away. These are wonderful places to live, very popular, and have much better value, of the homes that you purchase. You get a lot more for your money. So let's dive into looking at the 9 best suburbs of the Chicago area. I will start with, these are not in any order, but in number 1 would be Hinsdale, which is, far from the lake, not close at all, but one of the most beautiful suburbs in the Chicago area, having water, having beautiful, beautiful hiking trails, biking trails, forest preserves, so much beauty, so much more beauty in those respects than any of the suburbs close to the lake. So a lot more land, a lot more from your money. If you take a home in Hinsdale, a large home on a large lot, and you put it close to the lake, it would easily be $1 to $2 million more for the high-end homes. So big difference in property values. But the downtown, the restaurants, the beauty, the land, the spaciousness is so much better than the suburbs close to the lake. So there's a real advantage there if you do not need to be close to the lakefront, especially if you work out that way, or if you take the train into the city, which is fairly easy. These are things that, people really like. I've had clients that moved out that way because their kids were very high level athletes when they were, growing up, and some of the best and best coaching, highest level programs that they wanted their kids in were all out that way. So they moved out that way, even though they really kind of would have preferred to be by the lake. They went out that way. They loved it. Beautiful place. I just had another client that looked out that way, and it just bothered them to be away from the lake. So they came, they paid a lot more money for what they got, and they live in Glencoe, which is one of the other great suburbs in the Chicago area, definitely in the top 9. And Glencoe has had one of the skyrocketing property values through COVID. It was the highest that I saw out of any northern suburb, went up in value tremendously. So, because it was lagging a little bit for whatever reason, just a little bit lower, and now it just skyrocketed. So the new construction in Glencoe, much of it is fairly close to the lakefront. Glencoe has highly ranked schools, and has just a tremendous downtown. I mean, if you walk the downtown, you will know what I mean. It has a real community vibe, very kind of tucked away by the lakefront, quiet, and just a really, the metro train, the commuter train goes right downtown. You can be downtown in around 30 minutes. You sit on a quiet, clean train, and you kind of wish the train ride was longer sometimes, honestly, because it's so peaceful and you get so much done as far as having a little alone time, or getting some work done, or just reading some articles, whatever it is, there's some great advantages to Glencoe. The thing with Glencoe is Glencoe Beach, it's a very steep hill down, and it's just windy, and you get down there and you feel like you're just, really in a tucked away, private, very quiet beach, which you are, because there's no traffic. There's not a lot of people because of the lakefront. It isolates these areas because they're right on the lake. So looking at another one of the best suburbs in Chicago, I will say Hinsdale and Glencoe, the average price for homes in each of them, depending on when you look at it, is, right around 900 to 1.1 million. So that's the average home. There are homes in each that are 600,000 and below, a decent number for sure. But a big part of the market is right around that, million, 1-2 mark. And you will get a lot more for your money in Hinsdale at that price point. So moving on from there, the third area I'll look at is Wilmette, which is a little bit closer to the city than Glencoe, right on the lakefront. And Wilmette is a little bit larger of a suburb. It goes west away from the lake. So the part closest to the lake, obviously, typically is the most expensive. You will get, some of the largest homes in Wilmette close to the lake, anywhere from 3 to 20 million. And some have private beaches. But looking, into the village a little bit more, into the downtown area, a little further west from the lake where you have to drive or bike to the lake, 5-10 minutes, then you'll get into many homes that are in that 600 to 1.2 range. Again, Wilmette, it's not that different from Glencoe. It is primarily that 1 million to 1.3, 1.4 is a very, very popular hot price point, especially in the springtime. Now, Wilmette does have one of the largest beaches, and then it has right next to the public beach a sailing beach. It does have a dog beach. It has a marina for boats. So it has some things that are really spectacular, and it's closer to the city. So the train ride, the car ride is all closer to Chicago by a good 10 minutes, either in car. Actually, in car, it's probably like 12 minutes or more. And then on the train, about 10 minutes. The schools in Wilmette are some of the most highly ranked, in the state. And they operate kind of like private/public schools. They have fundraisers for the public schools for extra programs. So from what I've seen, it's very similar to a private school. Well, they'll bring in authors or have very interesting field trips, do things above and beyond because they're well funded from the fundraisers. Then going back out west away from the lake, you have Glen Ellen, which is a little bit further out for sure. But again, Glen Ellen is just a beautiful spot. Again, extremely good access to downtown. A little bit longer train ride than the suburbs on the North Shore, north of the city. So when you go away from the lake, some of these suburbs will have a 40, 45, 50-minute train ride depending on where you are. So Glen Ellen has great train access, but has a great Mexican restaurant that I love when I'm out there, and has great restaurants overall, has a great theater, and a lot of charm. It's a very well-established suburb, so it has a lot of older historic homes. Many have been renovated, and like it is typically in a lot of Chicago suburbs that have been around a while, you have the older, more vintage homes closer to the downtown area where you can walk, so it's a big advantage. And then you will have builders that will pop in new construction homes if the numbers work right, where they can buy a small home and knock it down and build a newer home. You will get a lot more home for your money in Glen Ellen than you will closer to the lake. You also will get a lot more home compared to Hinsdale, which is one of the more expensive areas in the western suburb. Hinsdale is. So Glen Ellen is great. Great parks, great schools. The clients I have living there, I've had some clients out there for just about 2 years now. They couldn't be more happy. They were looking on the North Shore, but they decided to make a lifestyle change and cut the price of their house basically in half and move out to Glen Ellen, and then just have a more relaxed lifestyle, work less, travel less for work, and be at home with the kids more. So that was a very, this is real world stuff. People are making decisions based upon how they want to live their lives, and Glen Ellen afforded them the opportunity to do that because they were looking in Winnetka before that, which is another one of the top suburbs, and that is right up on the lake. Has a average home price. It's between Wilmette and Glencoe, and it has an average home price of around 1.1 million. So Winnetka is very nice, very well established, lots of history in the suburb. It's a little bit further than Wilmette and a little closer than Glencoe, but Winnetka is known to be kind of upscale. The stores, the feeling, you have, interesting things in Winnetka, like a lot of history from the North Shore. You have the Home Alone house, which is always mentioned. People are nuts about going to see the Home Alone house, where the movie was filmed. And, you have a lot of windy streets, a lot of streets that were named after the children of some of the founders of Winnetka in the 1800s. The schools in Winnetka have been studied by other people, in the country, nationally, because of some of the programs they have, the methods of teaching. Winnetka schools are highly sought after, and you have private schools in Winnetka that are much smaller than the public schools that are very, very, sought after and well respected too. There's some really interesting people that have gone to school in Winnetka, in the public and private schools, some of the leaders in the country, comedians, actresses, business people. Just the really interesting people. Very interesting when you look into kind of the history of it. So Winnetka has a great beach, and it's right next to Glencoe and Wilmette. So these areas kind of blend, where you can just pop over to the other suburb and get a little variety of where to eat or what to do. The bike paths from Winnetka are really great. They're right along the railroad tracks, and you can go as a family or, a biking group and bike, run, take walks. You will see, once in a while, you'll see some deer. And then western Winnetka has, man-made kind of lakes, lagoons. A lot of people will go kayaking in. So you do have some of the beauty that you have in the western suburbs, but it's just not quite as expansive. It's just not as large an area, but you do have the lakefront. So then looking at interesting suburb, which definitely is considered one of the best suburbs in Chicago, ranked, typically in different publications and niche.com, is Evanston. Evanston is the closest suburb on the northern end to Chicago. It takes you, depending where you are in Evanston, anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes to get to the city of Chicago, to the border. And then you can be downtown in 30 minutes. Very beautiful ride on Lakeshore Drive, looking at the lake the whole way. So that is a big advantage to Evanston. Evanston also has a great variety of housing. So you have a lot of apartments. You have a lot of condos. Many new condo towers have been built in downtown Evanston, right by Northwestern University, which is definitely one of the anchors of Evanston. But Evanston is not like a total college town. It's too big of a city to be overwhelmed by Northwestern University. It has a great influence. I think it's just right, but it's definitely its own place too, Evanston. It stands on its own. A lot of movie theaters, great restaurants. a lot of variety in the types of food you can get, and kind of a city vibe, but you're in the suburbs still. There's some beautiful Victorian homes, beautiful homes on the lakefront. I sold one to a professional athlete. Has the lake right up against them for about $4.5 million a few years ago, and they really love just the beauty of the lake. I mean, that was the biggest draw. So Evanston is fantastic. The one thing with Evanston you have to be aware of is the home prices do not go quite as high as some of these other suburbs. They really top out mostly around 3-4 million. There's not a lot of new construction homes. It's more of an older city, not as many brand new, shiny, modern new construction homes. And Evanston is pretty hardcore as far as having historic districts and what you can do to some of the homes in those districts. So really need to be aware of property values and what you can do in these different areas. Another one of the top suburbs that you really should know about in north of Chicago would be Kenilworth. Kenilworth is a very tiny suburb, small. It has one of the only public schools, elementary schools, that goes K through 8. So it's unique. So the kids that go to that school are together for 9 years. Most of the other schools in these other suburbs will split up every few years, combine elementary schools for a middle school, junior high. So I think there's good and bad from what I've heard. People love the community feel, being together all the time. And then also, sometimes people say it's a little bit too much. They kind of would prefer to mix it up and the kids to meet new kids as they move on. Maybe they're not doing great socially. They need to have an influx of kids. So, I mean, everyone's different, but that is a little bit of the, what I've heard from clients on that and their preference. So Kenilworth, a lot of history there. It was a plot of land originally owned by Joseph Sears, which the school is named after, Sears School. And it's right up on the lake. The eastern side of Kenilworth has some of the largest, biggest homes, in the suburbs. The ones on the lakefront are extremely valuable. Definitely 10 to 20 million is not unusual. And you have homes on the western side of Kenilworth that will be in that $1 to $2 million range. Smaller homes, smaller lots, and just a few minutes from the beach, longer than the bigger homes. So everyone's close together, but there's a big drop off in property value because of the size, really, not the location. In western Kenilworth, western is away from the lake. So another suburb that is really kind of a hidden gem of sorts that you should be aware of is Northfield. Northfield is just one step away from Kenilworth. It's a smaller suburb, and Northfield has just a little bit of a rural feel. The lot sizes are very large in comparison to like a Wilmette. And it's kind of quiet. There's not a downtown area. There's a couple beautiful schools, one brand new school, and a great little park district, great parks. Northfield's really very nice. There is a floodplain that goes through it, so you have to be aware of that. But there's some really large homes in Northfield, but they are kind of off the main road, tucked away, and on large lots. It gets to be a different feeling pretty quickly as you go away from the lake. So Northfield, if you want a really quiet, quaint area close to everything, but you want to be like really kind of a quiet spot, Northfield could be really good. And the values of the homes are pretty high, but sometimes a hair less than the ones closer to the lake. So something to keep in mind. Then looking further west, again, one of the best values as far as the suburbs go, if you kind of want to be close to Hinsdale, close to Glen Ellen, and you want to be a little bit closer to the city, and you want to spend less money, get a lot more for your money, Elmhurst is a great place. Has a great downtown area, very highly ranked schools, great community. But they have a lot of houses that are priced in a more moderate range. In the new construction, the higher end homes, you just get a lot for your money. You just need to be careful that in the peaks of the market, like we are at now, that you do not overspend. So, because Elmhurst, from my experience, I've seen people make this mistake. Go to an area like Elmhurst or a place that doesn't have as much traction in the high end and buy like one of the highest priced homes. And if the market pulls back, you could be left, losing some money. So you kind of have to know the areas, the type of housing, the builder. You have to be aware of this, but it could, if you do everything right, it could be a great value of a place. So, and then let me tell you about a suburb that's on the far northern end of the city, coming back to the lake, and that is Lake Forest. Lake Forest is going to be a 45, 50-minute train ride to the city. But Lake Forest was always, being born and raised in this area. Just call, text, email if you have any questions at all. I am one of the most experienced agents on the North Shore, in the western suburbs, in all these areas. Over the last 32 years, I've sold over 1,200 homes. So Lake Forest is the home of many professional athletes, people that work in pro sports, because the Bears practice close by, the Chicago Bears. And it also has a lot of business leaders, because there's a lot of large companies up that way. And it's close to the lake, and the lakefront is just beautiful there. And you have more open space. You have these nature preserves. You have a place to take your dog. You have country clubs. It's very nice. And the lots are much larger. You get a lot more for your money. But I will say, for some reason, Lake Forest property values went down pre-COVID. I mean, it was really surprising how hard it was to sell a home in Lake Forest for a number of years, and where the property's value went. Well, that has all come back to how it used to be. COVID has just changed things dramatically with the size of the lots, the value you get for a home there, the size you get for your money. Lake Forest is tremendous. And there's been an influx of just fantastic restaurants in the town center, and it is good, really good. So you should check it out. And Lake Forest now, the values skyrocketed. So people's homes have gone up tremendously in value, kind of like they always were. Like when I was growing up in Chicago area, Lake Forest was top-notch property value, highly sought after. People love Lake Forest, and it's kind of that way again, even though they went through a little down spot there. So another place that you want to be aware of that, again, is kind of a hidden spot. If you want somewhere a little bit more quiet and close to everything, bigger lots, is really small place called the Village of Golf. Now, this is an interesting place. They have their own train station. You can get downtown, and it is a very small, insulated area. It's very unique. There aren't that many homes. It's right up on Glenview, and it is really beautiful. I've been through there with clients a lot. I'm just listing a home a few blocks from Golf in Glenview right now, and it's very quiet. So people walk in the streets. There's no downtown. There's no stores. But you're about 3 minutes from all of that. But it's just not in the Village of Golf. So, and it's also kind of hard to find the type of home you want there, because there's so few homes, and the inventory is at an all-time low right now. You really have to be aware of the Village of Golf. So this is one of the top Chicago suburbs, but it's just not big. And it is close to the expressway to get downtown. It's close to Glenview. It's close to Old Orchard Mall, which is a great mall down the street. So these are great things. So I'll wrap this up with one of the suburbs that is definitely, if you don't mind being out a bit, away from the city, you really need to look at Barrington. So I just had a client that you would think would live on the lake, close to the lake because of where he works. And he grew up in the country in the South, and he had to have like an acre or more of land, which, you know, is a lot of land. You just don't get that, you know, closer to the lake. So we ended up finding an incredible house. We looked all over Barrington. There are some large homes there. And the prices are so low compared to the homes close to the lake, but they're beautiful. Really nice homes. So found something out there, but you're talking about where you have windy roads and everybody has an acre or more, and, you know, there's just yards expansive everywhere, you know, but it will take you about 40 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, to get to, say, Evanston or the lakefront. So it's a bit of a drive. You can take the train, but if you're working excuse me, from home, or you're out that way, really amazing. But you will run into all kinds of different things like septic systems and, you know, whether or not it's an incorporated area or not. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to know. So you really want to be aware of all this. And also the property values and the market times in Barrington can be outrageously long, a year to 2 years in past slow markets, to sell a home in Barrington. So you need to be aware of that compared to many of the areas that are quicker market times and more demand closer to the lake. So call, text, email if you have a question about any of these. I've been selling here for 32 years and definitely have, you know, much more experience than most people making videos, selling real estate, anything like that. So definitely get the best information. Call and text anytime.